Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's great to be in your studio, and you're definitely somebody who I've wanted to talk to for a long time. And like I said earlier, our social circles overlap. We got lots of mutual friends, and it's exciting for me to meet you and to talk to you, man. I think the first thing I'm interested in hearing a little bit about is just this podcast journey that you've been on. I started mine 5 years ago. It's been transformational in my life. It's enriched me in so many ways. It's been an incredible thing, and so I'm interested in what motivated you to decide to get into this, and what the experience has been like for you.
5 years. Wow. I've been at it a year or so, just over a year, and it really was almost on a whim. Like I think most people know the story, the arc of the story, and we being me and my manager, who I'd been with for a long time, who's stuck with me, he was trying to figure out a way for me to just do something, and sort of, as the cycling platform and sports platform went away, the cancer platform went away, what is a platform that we could find or go and get? And so he was on me for well over a year. Dude, just start a podcast, and everybody. Everybody's still, who are your true friends want to sit down and rap, and just go do it. And it's like, I don't want to do it. I didn't want to start it, actually, because I was afraid I'd just kind of get sick of it. And a weekly show, as you know, is kind of a pain in the butt.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And
so I just started it on a whim, and it's been great. It's been great to talk to people. It's been great to quote unquote work, because I try to not. I don't just have somebody on and sit down and go, okay, what do you want to talk about? Yeah. Like I dig into their lives. I spend days thinking about their lives, reading about their lives. So reading about somebody else's life has been, I haven't done homework in a long, long time.
Yeah, it is homework. If you want to do it right and you really want to deliver, something solid, you got to put the time in, man. And I think people don't really appreciate how much time it takes to do it well. Right. So, and you've been doing it well. And I feel like you really found your groove with stages. Like that's compelling, to be able to go behind the scenes. Right.
Yeah. The spinoff of The Forward, which again was totally random, last minute, started as one idea that didn't materialize, and then morphed into another idea which I didn't think would work, and then I just recruited an old friend who you just met at this.
Yeah, it was crazy. I'm at this event, I'm speaking, and he's the dude who's like filming the whole thing, and he comes up to me after I talked. He's like, I love your talk. Gives me a We-Do hat. He's like, we should connect. I was like, wait, I know this guy.
Right.
And so I was like, I've been trying to connect with Lance, because I'd email you, and then a couple days would go by, and I'm like, I don't know if this is happening or not. Right. He's like, I'll ping him, and then you would just email me back. So here we are. No, but that's cool, man. Are there, who are your dream guests that you're trying to track down? Like, who would you really like to sit down and talk to?
On the weekly show, God, who would I want to talk to? I said,
somebody asked you the other day about Oprah, right?
About who?
Oprah.
Oprah, yeah. I'll talk to Oprah. She'll be. She owes me. She'll come on the show. Who was it? And somebody asked me the other day, and I didn't have a great answer.
Did you read John Ronson's book? Mm-hmm. So he wrote this amazing book called So You've Been Publicly Shamed. I think that's the title of it. And it's kind of about, what happens when somebody missteps and then the internet piles on, and then lives get wrecked in the wake of that, and people just kind of move on. It's a cultural phenomenon that I think we're seeing more and more of. Right. It's, something that you live through and have a unique perspective on. But I think in the context of, of that and what I said in my email to you, like I'm interested in how you move forward from something like that. And as somebody who's, faced adversity in my own life and kind of weathered, certain storms, not on the level that you've had to, of course, but, how do you pick up the pieces and move forward? Right. And obviously that's the name of your podcast. And that's kind of the theme of, how you're trying to live your life and rebuild this. And I think in the context of the conversation that surrounds you, what gets eclipsed are all these other qualities that made you successful, because the doping thing looms so large that we don't get to talk about these other aspects of your career. And, you're a kid who at 15, you're out there mixing it up with Mark Allen and Mike Pigg, just basically this raw talent who, took his talent and fueled it with mindset and extreme preparation and focus that no one had ever seen, in your sport, that took you to a certain height. And so I'm interested in the mindset piece of that. That focus and what you think it is about you that allowed you to kind of, achieve that height.
That all got lost, Rich. The reality is, here's the truth, right? And the problem with the whole story is that we still don't have the truth, right? Which is sort of a fucked up thing to think about. So for all these years, we peddled, for lack of a better word, a narrative, a story. So the training was harder and more cutting edge than anybody else. The technology piece, the testing, the reconnaissance, the composition of the team, all these things we said were the reason that we were the best. There was one part of it we said we didn't talk about, right? Doesn't take away the fact that all those things happened and they all made the difference. The last part, unfortunately, the generation that we were in, everybody had to have that part. But they didn't have the first 10 parts. So literally overnight, it shifted to, and again, this is what you just talked about, when the internet piles on and the media piles on and people pile on and commenters pile on. It shifted to, it was all about that one thing. And all these 10 other things, the training, the reconnaissance, the composition of the team, the tactics, that was a bunch of bullshit. He just gave us a bunch of bullshit for 15 years. So while this rise wasn't totally true, the fall isn't totally true either, because what happened in the middle is you had an agency in USADA who came and said some very intense, damaging, and untrue things. They said that the athlete at the center of it all is the biggest fraud in the history of sport. Think about that. They said that this athlete and his team ran the most sophisticated doping program in the history of the world. Think about that.
But there's truth in that, isn't there?
No, there's not. There's not truth.
So
the worst is this athlete forced young, impressionable men to put deadly substances into their body. Think about that. So I get it. I get that they said that. That was part of, as the report came out and as the takedown took place, they needed PR points, bullet points, talking points, and those were their points. And so I understand. I know why Travis Tigert says those things, because he was about reinforcing his report. There's a lot of truth to the report. But those things, those talking points are not true.
So when you measure up,
and not that it matters,
right?
But it's hard to recover from those things.
Yeah, well, when that's the primary narrative, and you're somebody who's always, you're very savvy with the media, and you've always done a very good job of trying to control the narrative and the story,
right.
And that was a situation that you couldn't control.
No, you
obviously.
can't. And I for the rest of the time, I won't be able to control
right.
it. But that's the beauty of having your own podcast.
You think the other teams had protocols that were as sophisticated as Postal?
Look, I'm gonna boil this down to you very, very simply and straight out of the truth here. In the Postal case, and this is not off the record. These are public transcripts. The world will and should know. In the Postal case, we have to depose everybody. One of the depositions that we've taken is Tyler Hamilton. The line of questioning to Tyler Hamilton was, because Tyler, to back up a little bit, Tyler goes from Postal to CSC to Phonak. You probably know enough to let your listeners.
And then he was on like Rock Racing at the end.
Right, but that's a whole other. So the line of questioning goes like this: was there more doping at Postal or CSC? And the answer was CSC. Was there more doping at CSC or Phonak? The answer was Phonak. So our system, look, it doesn't matter. I mean, we were all dirty. The teams were all dirty. They were all at the game. They were all playing the game. But, and again, I feel silly talking about this because it really doesn't matter what I think or what I say. But I'm just telling you, we were not the most sophisticated system in the world.
But you're the bullseye.
Yeah, you know? and again, that goes back to me understanding why they did what they did and why they said what they said. I'm not. By the way, I wouldn't change a thing.
That's something that I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about.
I wouldn't change a thing. I don't think it was
your life. I think I've heard you say, like, you know, you like your life better now.
Yeah.
So all things being equal, if you could go back, if you didn't make the comeback and all that kind of stuff, and you could have continued to live with this.
Yeah, none of this. Then I would have.
And would you trade what's going on now for that life?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't change a thing.
Because why?
Because and by the way, too, there's a lot of stops along this train here that could have been. None of this could have happened. Some of this could have happened, or what happened could have happened.
Right.
And so, the option of nobody ever finding out, it never being exposed, me continuing to just live the life I was living, I wouldn't. I don't want that.
When you were in that position, though, did you like feel the weight of trying to carry that lie, or did you just compartmentalize it?
Yeah, that was completely compartmentalized. I mean, that was the way the game was played at the time. And some people don't like to hear that for a variety of reasons, but that's the way me and my peers played the game. Mm-hmm. And then the next option is some sort of a hybrid option where USADA wants to work together, and my deal is the same deal as everybody else. My deal is the same as George, and the same as Levi, and the same as Tyler, and the same as everybody. Which is this 6-month off-season suspension, and come help us. But that wasn't the deal, and so I didn't. The message to me was loud and clear: "Hey, come out with your hands up. We have you surrounded." Mm-hmm. Which that never works well with me. Mm-hmm. So I said, "Fuck you."
Right.
But it wasn't the same message, but it's neither here nor there. So I say fuck you, and it's World War III, total meltdown. Everything goes away, all the platforms, all the sponsors, the lawsuits pile up, everything. And so it's been 5 years. Mm-hmm. And I think, I know the way I operate as a man, as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a host of a podcast, as a teammate, as a businessman, as anything, is far better than it ever would have been.
And so how did you...
That's important. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is I know, and I say this all the time, I know who my friends are. Whereas... go back 6 or 7 years.
Well, when the shit hits the fan and everyone, flees or whatever, that's
when I look back on, and I have great memories, but when I look back on the people that sort of populated that scene, those weren't friends. And not that they were bad friends or they were mean or they were vindictive, but they just weren't friends.
They're there for the ride.
And and they're gone, which is a bummer, but the better thing, or the real highlight is there are people that surprise you because it turns out they weren't friends. The shit hits the fan, and you're public enemy number one, and all of a sudden there are people calling going, "Hey, let's go get a beer. Let's go play golf. Mm-hmm. Let's go for a bike ride." I'm like, "Well, where'd you come from?" Mm-hmm. So they weren't interested in kissing ass, toasting the champagne, riding around in the team car. They didn't care about that, but they were a friend.
And so the journey from that place to where you are now requires grappling with anger and resentment. Mm-hmm. It's like as somebody who's long time sober, they kind of say in recovery, justifiable anger is like your death knell, to hold on to that, even when you're right. Do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Yep. And, you're somebody who's fueled by, in many ways in the past, there is an anger component to what has fueled you. And that's, I've noticed, from the sidelines that slowly dissipate. Right. I mean, because there was still a lot of that, in the Oprah interview era, right? Yep. And so how have you traversed that to kind of come to terms with that and begin to let go of it? I
mean, look, I've done a few major interviews since it went down. Obviously, everybody points to the Oprah one, which they should. And Oprah had its reasons for happening. Oprah wasn't while it certainly appears that the timing wasn't right, it had to happen then. And it didn't go well. And you're right. I was a certain guy at the time. So if you compare Oprah to Joe Rogan 2-ish years ago to Howard Stern 6 months ago, those are different. I mean, I got so many, like after Rogan and Stern, people were like, dude, why didn't you just say that on Oprah? Like, we'd have been fine.
Yeah.
Like,
but you weren't that guy.
I wasn't
then.
ready. No, I mean, and again, Oprah felt rushed, and maybe in some senses it was, but that's a different person, and that's it
wouldn't have mattered if she wasn't rushed. I don't think, right? Like you were just you were holding on to a certain perspective on the whole situation at that time, and that was going to come out no matter who was interviewing you.
And that's a whole process of me just living my life and living with this story and living with people's reaction and living with therapy, living with.
What's the therapy all about?
No kind of special magic therapy, just standard therapy that I do solo, I do with Anna. Anna does solo, we do with the kids. Just more just conversation on our lives, and obviously with the children, we tried to help them navigate this as teenagers as best they could. But to be honest, I mean, the more important element has just come through, and it is therapy in a sense, that just in conversations with people, whether they're in an airport over a cup of coffee or even over email. I mean, just understanding where people were when all this went down and how it affected them. So that to me has been the most important part. And so I just let go of, like, I mean, you saw it. I get it. I get it. I don't think they're necessarily honorable or honest, but hey, I don't care. I mean, I'm not that is, I cannot change that.
Right.
And so, almost all of it's gone away. Not all of it, but almost all of it.
Well, you got one big thing looming over you right now. You got the one big lawsuit. Is May the trial date for that? Sometime in May? I mean, what's that like to wake up every day with that?
I never think about it.
You don't think about it.
We're going to win the case.
Yeah. That's the Lance Armstrong mindset. Back to the mindset.
We're going to win the case. And the government cannot prove damages.
Well, it's an interesting thing.
They admit this. So look, the case is about one thing. It's not about who's a good guy, bad guy, nanny, boo, boo, none of that. It's about damages. And they freely admit that they cannot prove that they were damaged.
Yeah, there's liability and then there's damages. I mean, liability is, looks like it's pretty clear, but how do you establish? I mean, is there anybody walking around who says, I love going to the post office and waiting in a long line, but now I'm going to use UPS because of what happened? Like that's a tough.
I'm not going to send my Christmas cards. No, look, in the
Do you never use the post office?
No, I use them all the time.
You do.
And I said it on Stern. Like I loved representing the Postal Service, riding around in Europe with the United States, anything on your chest, standing on the top step on the Champs-Elysees with the national anthem with the United States Postal. I loved that. Like I wasn't ashamed of that. I didn't think that was a goofy sponsor like some people thought. I was proud of that. And so, but look, I mean, in Judge Cooper's courtroom, we had a summary judgment hearing, and he pushed them. He said, you got to give me a number. And he said, Your Honor, we don't have a number. And this is a public proceeding, so I'm not saying anything out of class here. And he pressed them 3 or 4 times. He said, we don't have a number. And Judge Cooper said, okay, well, I'll make it real easy. Name one client that you lost because of all this.
Was that in summary judgment proceedings?
Right.
Yeah.
In November. And they said, Your Honor, we don't have one.
Right. But it still got by summary judgment, though.
Yeah, but it's hard. It's almost impossible to win on summary judgment. The judge, they don't want to be appealed. They don't want to get appealed. They don't want to get overturned. It's easy for them to say, I'm just going to let the jury decide.
Right.
Which is fine. I mean,
Let's get back to the mindset piece. I'm interested in kind of exploring that, as an athlete myself, and a lot of athletes that listen to this show, what is it that you think, back to the original question, really, like, what is it that you think set you apart and allowed you to, sort of succeed on the level that you did, everything else aside? I mean, one of the things you did is you kind of came into cycling and you reimagined the schedule, first of all, because everyone was doing all these races. And you're like, the only one that matters is Tour de France. I'm just going to focus on that. I'm going to sidestep all this other stuff that was new and different at the time. And the ability to just kind of hone in, with that singular, ability to just lock in on one thing and really, set up your entire life around that one goal, I think is interesting. And just, what is it, what is it you think when you look around at other athletes, triathletes, cyclists, whatever, that you think that you have that other people didn't have? Or and what can be learned from that? The
scheduling part wasn't, Indurain did that too, although some of those years he did the Tour of Italy, but he figured out in his home country of Spain, the biggest bike race in the world and the only bike race was really the Tour. But that's the same in every country. So especially as Americans, we certainly don't know what the Vuelta is or the Giro or the Classic. They don't know any of that shit. And we know the Tour because of Greg LeMond. And so it was easy for me to just say, okay, I'm coming back from cancer. Nobody thinks that I'm going to amount to anything anyways. I could barely get it. I begged to be on the Postal Service team. And this all meets the comeback, meets the team firing Johnny Welts, hiring Johan Brunel, and really, a lot of this had to do with his vision, his genius that he was and still is. But that was for he and I, we formed a perfect partnership where I was willing to do the work. He was motivated to lay out the agenda and the plan. Of course, I'm not going to discount or ignore the fact that Michele Ferrari was an amazing trainer, the best in the business, and probably still is to this day. So the way that all came together, the athlete, my willingness to work hard, the training, and then Johan's vision of how we were going to do this. And he truly believed it. Like and all that mixed in with this sort of fuck you attitude, because, certainly at that time, the fact that we called 20 teams and 19 of them just literally hung up within 5 seconds. The chip on my shoulder back in 98, 99 was tremendous. And so that worked. And I think a lot of athletes use that as, I know a lot of athletes use that as motivation. And even if there's not a real reason to have a chip, they'll go make one up. I'd make them up.
Right. Yeah. I remember you said on Rogan that you used to concoct stories about competitors.
Did you see that quote?
And then carry that out of the race into the real world and get yourself into a bunch of trouble.
Yeah. It turns out they're great guys.
Ultimately, it's not a sustainable fuel source though, right? Is it? And like now you have to find a new motivation to get out on the bike and do what you do, and a different set of ground rules for that. So, what does that look like?
I don't compete.
If you could, you would though.
I can't, but I can. I can compete, of course.
You can compete.
I can compete in anything but cycling.
Oh, you can. Oh, so that's been lifted. Right on.
Well, I didn't know that. The fine print says that after 4 years, an athlete given a lifetime ban, that after 4 years they can compete. It's a little bit limited. I couldn't go do Kona. Couldn't do. Anyways, there's a bunch.
There's certain races you can. Right.
But like last spring, I started riding a lot, and I got back into riding for a couple of reasons. But I started riding a lot, and I started feeling fit. And I was like, I'll go do some of these gravel races. They're all unsanctioned. A bunch of cool people do them. They're hard. And I'd get in these races with these young kids. I'd be 40. I was 45 at the time. I'd get in a race with a 25-year-old pro. And, next thing I know, there's 2 guys left, and it's me and him. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I'm here, because I'm me. I'm supposed to be here. But the 25-year-old pro lives and breathes and is obsessed with cycling, and he eats perfectly, and he trains perfectly, and he rests a lot. And me being me, who just kind of rides for fun, gets in that situation. So my head says, of course I'm here. But then all of a sudden the body the warning lights start coming on.
Right, but you still have some semblance of the win at all costs mentality that's got to percolate up.
But for me, it's either just ride for fun, ride to stay fit, ride to be with your friends, and not compete, or you're all in. You live like a monk. You completely dedicate all of your, every aspect of your life for a goal. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't. And that's
so you have to make peace with the fact that you're going to get your ass kicked here and there by these young kids.
Yeah, and that's where I had I did 4 or 5 of them, and after like the 5th one, I was like, I'm sick of like the warning lights. It's like, dude, just chill out. Like your summer's coming up. Go to Aspen, just ride with your friends. And if you're alone, if you need to suffer, just go a little harder.
But that's a maturity. That's an evolution, I think. And as you inch up, what are you, 47 now? 46? Yeah. So as you inch towards 50, how do you, and you know that you're not going to be able to be, at that level that you're used to being at. Like being
at
okay
50,
with that.
Look, if somebody waved a magic wand and said, okay, at 50, you can do Kona. You can go race Kona.
You go back in the cave.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I don't know if I would or wouldn't, but you at that point you are not competing for the victory. You just, I don't care who you are. You're not. I mean, unless everybody else crashed.
But I could see you thinking like, I'm gonna give this everything and see what I could do, because that's the one thing that you haven't been able to do.
But there's a different type of result. I mean, you could say, as a 50-year-old, could you be top 10? Like that's like winning.
Yeah.
So could you set that as the bar? Yeah. But at 46, I had this conversation with Andrew Messick the other day, and we were talking about a lot of things, and I said, you know what? I'm glad I didn't go to Kona in 2012. I would have been lit up. I'd have been crawling down the road.
You think so?
Yeah.
Why?
Because because it took me, the nutrition, hydration, I wouldn't have had dialed. I would have, the pacing, it just that event, in my sense that event takes a lot of experience. And it took me a long time, seemingly a long time, just to figure out halves. But the fulls are,
they're almost not even comparable.
Right.
It's a completely different thing.
I would have completely screwed it up. And I told him, I was like, thank you.
Yeah. Well, when you listen to Mark Allen, who I know you just had on your show, and I've had him on my show as well, how long it took him to master that. And even McCormick, with all his brashness and talent, how many years it took him to conquer that as well. So
yeah. And then then you get into 40, and then you're just getting farther and farther away from that magic. It doesn't. Yes, you're getting experience, but by the way, you're becoming an old man, and so.
What about the difference between... Did
you swim this morning, by the way?
I did, man. Where were you?
I know I had kid drop off, and I was trying to manage... Like, I do... I'm a morning person, and Anna is an evening person. So I get the kids up and start to get them fed and get their day going, and then she likes to sleep in. So she sleeps in a little bit, and then we both get up, or she gets up, and then we take them to school. Right. And so... But then having said that, I'm the person that's, boots up at 9 o'clock and stays up till midnight. Yeah. So I couldn't figure out how to
make it all work. Well, you also said you were going to do the group ride at 8:30 and the swim practice started at like 7:15 and it's out of town. So I was like, there's no way
I was going to get out early. I don't swim the whole time. When I'm first back in the pool, I swim 2,000. Yeah. So I would have been out of there by 8.
Rip's pretty fit, man. He was looking good.
Rip's always fit. He's a freak. He's a freak.
I know. But I'm interested in the differences that you've experienced between, cycling, which is a team sport, and then moving into, triathlon, which was your original sport anyway, the individual aspect of that. And then kind of what it's been like to dip your toe in the water of the ultras and the ultra running and the Leadvilles and what kind of, how did that impact your preparation, your mindset throughout those races? Yep. Like, what are the differences between those two worlds?
I mean, when I was running a couple of years ago, it wasn't structure. All of those, cycling had structure. triathlon in 2012 had structure. After that, after the Reason decision came out and I wasn't allowed to compete, there's just no structure. I don't have a coach. In those days and in those years, I knew exactly what I was going to do every day for a week. And then I'd get a new program, and then and then we would adjust, or you would test. And so it was way more scientific. And since then, I literally wake up, check the weather, or maybe arrange it the night before with some buddies. Hey, you want to run? It's so casual.
Right.
And with that too, that year that I was running, I was just, my program, if there was one, was I just kind of followed what everybody else was doing. So if these fast guys in town were out doing a workout, I would attempt to sit in on the workout, right? And that would be my structure. And they were way faster than me, way lighter than me, and ended up getting injured. And running's...
You got a little injured with that, right? Recently? You're back into it?
Well, I'm starting to run a little more now, but both of my psoases just gave out.
Right.
Which is turns out it's a really important muscle for running. If you can't, your first psoas is shut down.
Well, also as you get old, I'm about to turn 51. Like you have to start paying so much more attention to all that annoying stuff that you don't really want to do, the foam rolling and all the rehabbing kind of things.
Yeah.
And you get those niggles much more easily than you used to. But, you go out and you ride with these young guys, Lawson Craddock or whoever, like fast, young pros. If what would it look like if you were to, in an alternative universe, if you were to start coaching some young athletes, whether triathletes or cyclists? Like, what do you see people doing?
Idea.
Why?
Because I never coached myself. How am I going to... I just listened to
but here's the thing, and this goes back to the original question, which is what gets eclipsed in the conversation about you, is that you have this you're sitting on top of an unbelievable amount of experience, right? And so, what is it about that experience that we know less about, that could be helpful to young athletes? Like, when you're out with these guys, and you're looking at them and you're like, why is he doing that? He should be doing this,
right? Yeah, but it's more, look, let's just use Lawson as an example, right? Because he does live here in Austin, and he is on the world tour, and I do train with him. And so last winter, he says, "You want to go for a ride?" I said, "Sure." And I said, "How long are we going?" He's like, 6 hours. I said,
"Right,
okay." I said, "Well, what do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I have 3 1 hour and 15-minute intervals at 290 watts," and he's not a big guy. And I said,
for those that are listening that don't know,
I said, what did you just say? I said, and mind you, it's November. I was eating fucking apple cobbler and Bluebell ice cream in November, and drinking beer and staying up late. And I'm like, wait, what did you just say? You're telling me you're going to do 3 hours and 45 minutes of intervals in November on a 6-hour ride? And he says, yeah. I said, okay. So I go on the ride, and at my age and at my level, all I can do is sit on the wheel, but I can stay on the wheel. But I'm sitting back. So to your point, I'm sitting there going, what the fuck is this kid doing? This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
I mean, to be that early in the year and hammering that hard.
Yep. And there was a lot more to it, which I won't bore the listener with. But I said, who told you to do this? And he says, oh, JV's doing the training, Jonathan Butters. I said, well... figures. I mean, that is so ill-advised, and just nobody can tolerate that.
Because what? What's the lesson? What is it that you're trying to communicate about preparation?
I think you have to.
You gotta play the long game.
Not to say that nobody couldn't handle. Maybe there is some person out there that maybe Eddie Merckx could have done that. Lawson Craddock can't do that. And it almost felt like an experiment, and I just thought it was. And I tell Lawson this, and I would tell JV this. That's not a fair experiment. This is a kid he doesn't have that engine, and what makes you think that's going to work? And fast forward, it destroyed him. I mean, this kid was on the sideline the entire season, and if he wasn't on the sideline, he was the first guy getting dropped. So, to your point, I mean, for me, I don't want to sit here and go, okay, no, not 3 hours and 45 minutes of intervals. How about we do 5, 10, or make up? That's not my thing. But I can look at it from my own experience and go, I don't think that's a good idea. Checking that it's November, checking that I know the athlete, checking that, a lot of other boxes, and say, no, you gotta find a better option here. Or you get into the technical parts of cycling or strategy. I mean, those things I know, but I mean, as far as, creating a training plan, I was a listener. I always did, all the way from swimming age group, swimming at 12 years old, all the way through. I just said, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah, but at some point, you must be taking more and more ownership of what works for you, right?
The only in the sense that I gave a lot of feedback. And so we were the relationship between Johan and myself and Ferrari and myself there was constant communication there. So if I felt like something wasn't working, or like any athlete with any training plan, you're tired, you need a little more recovery, you have a slight injury, like that has to be put on the table. And doesn't do anybody any good hiding that or being ashamed to talk about that. Fuck it. Just say, you know what? I'm destroyed. This is what Lawson Craddock should have done. He didn't. He just kept running the plan and digging a hole for himself. Just tap out for a little bit.
Right. So the message underneath that is you got to know when to let off the gas, and that perhaps too many people are going too hard too often.
I mean, I think most people go too hard.
It's hard. It's a different kind of discipline to know when to hold back.
And if you talk about tries, I mean, the try world is, you know this. I mean, the makeup of that athlete, that's the way they're wired, at least for a few years. And inevitably they all burn out or get injured or just say, okay, I've had enough.
Right.
But they're wired to just go hard and commit their life to this. And, that might work for some, but I don't know that works for most.
Well, in the amateur context, that's
what I'm talking about.
It's unbelievably expensive and unbelievably time consuming. Yeah. So it doesn't lend itself to longevity. Yeah. And in the pros, there's so few people who can even make a living doing this. Right. It's crazy, and the amount of energy and time and discipline and focus that goes into trying to compete at the highest level of Ironman, it's unbelievable. Like, unless you're in the top percentile of those athletes, like, I don't know how these guys get by. And it's a systemic, issue that needs to get addressed and fixed somehow, especially when you have this organization that's just making so much money.
I know, but the sport is not about the tip of the spear. The sport's about the middle of the pack. Yeah. That's why when we did stages for Kona, and I had Mark Allen on and Dave Scott on, while you have to talk to them about 1989 and the Iron War and what that was like, I watched enough interviews that Bob Babbitt did with them to know what they're going to say. So you got to cover it in case your listener hasn't watched those interviews. But I'm way more interested in saying, okay, Mark, there's 2,000 people in Kona today that are about to do a full Ironman in 4 days. Like, speak to the middle of the pack. Right. I mean, Jan Frodeno, he knows what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Miranda Carefree knows what they got it. So let's not talk to them. But, and when you watch the NBC coverage, when it comes on,
well, it's all about those special stories. Right. That's the bread and butter of the whole thing. Yeah.
So that's all. I mean, Messick and Ironman, I mean, I think they try to be sensitive to the pros and prize money and that part of the sport. But by the way, I mean, with their ownership structure now, that ownership is not at all about who's going to win this weekend. I mean, it's about growing the business, building out more events, numbers.
Yeah. Well, and cycling has its own problems as well. I mean, that's just a shit show in so many ways. I mean,
it was easy to take over. It turns out it's easy to dominate a bunch of stupid people. I mean, really, let's be honest. I mean, it really.
So explain that.
Well, the way, and I don't mean to, I'm not trying to sound like a jerk or say people, but the way Johan and I came in, this was a sport that was easy to take over. They were stuck in their ways. We were coming in the late 90s. They were still, treating the sport like it was the early 80s. It could be, the mentality towards, the biggest barrier that probably still exists today is their attitude towards women. You could never have a woman soigneur. You could never have your wife at the race. You could never have her visit. It was totally old school. So I didn't
even know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, that seems to have changed, but just the ability to, or the willingness to explore other things, whether it's technology or wind tunnel, or when we first went, it sounds so obvious to go do reconnaissance. You have 10 major climbs in the tour. Go spend 5 days and get to just, even though if you think you know them, go there alone when there's not a million people on the hillside and just go do it. It was crazy. The first year we went in 1999, we didn't see anybody. In 2000, we didn't see anybody. But they started to figure out that we were going in 2001.
So none of these riders were going off and riding the course ahead of time.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
And so then we took it from seeing the mountains to seeing all the time trials. And then after 5 or 6 years, they're all
Everybody's
there.
doing it.
And so
right.
that is so... I'm embarrassed to even say it. It's so obvious.
Have you seen the Icarus documentary?
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't seen it yet?
But I've been asked about 5,000 times if I've seen it.
Right.
And I only haven't.
Do you have a resistance to watching it?
No, not at all. I'd love to see it. But I don't watch TV at home. I watch movies, I love documentaries. But I only watch them when I travel. And so in my, dumb self, the only way I know how to download anything is through iTunes.
You don't have Netflix?
I have Netflix at home, but you can't, apparently, and this is what I'm told, and I think it's right, you can't download a movie from Netflix on your computer. And all I have is a computer.
No, you can't download it. You just stream it. You can stream it anywhere on your laptop or whatever.
On a plane?
Oh, not on a plane.
Right.
The internet's not strong enough on a plane.
No,
you only watch them on planes.
When I'm forced to sit in a seat for 3 hours,
right.
That's how I pass the time. So you can download it to a mobile device, your phone or an iPad. I don't have an iPad. A phone, I don't want to watch it on my phone. But anyways, I'd love to see it. I met with Fogel years ago when the movie was the original movie. Where he was...
Right, just the original conceit of the movie. Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Right.
Whatever.
Did he interview you on camera for that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, he didn't. Yeah, I had him on the podcast recently. I haven't published that interview yet, but it was... you should definitely watch it.
Sure.
It's incredibly fascinating, and it will just change and color your perception of sport and clean sport, not just in cycling, but sport-wide. And he really is able to tap into the profundity of this problem in a massive way.
Yep.
And when you realize the level at which these practices are being perpetrated, it's shocking. And it's as a kid, I grew up, there was nothing I loved more than the Olympics. Like, that was just the greatest thing ever. And I swam at Stanford, and had I shown up, I was like basically a walk-on, but had I shown up and I found out, all my heroes on that team, there was some kind of program going on, I don't know what I would have done, I probably would have done, who knows, I don't know. But I can't shake thinking about this movie and the extent basically these guys are saying, like, nobody who's won an Olympic medal is clean. I don't know whether that's true or not.
I don't either.
But with these people who are sort of sitting atop this world of doping and anti-doping, to hear them say that, it really, makes you think. It makes you question the future of sport and what can be done to create an even playing field, whether that's even possible, especially with all the crazy technological advances and CRISPR and genetics and everything that's going on. Like, it's going to get fucking crazy, And I don't know what that's going to look like. And
I'm still waiting. I'm still just trying to get eclipsed from being the most sophisticated doping program in the history of the world.
Well, yeah, I think you're going to live with that for a while, unfortunately. Yeah. That is what it is. But, I think when you watch this movie,
I don't think that's true.
It pulls covers and makes you realize that this is a problem that extends much more broadly beyond cycling, that sort of takes the brunt of it. And when you look at the way that certain sports are treated versus the NFL and the NBA and how we kind of, take a blind eye to those other sports and the vested interests that are at play there, I don't know how to even begin to unpack and address the larger problem.
Yeah. I don't either.
I don't know. Well, you should watch the movie.
I will. No, I will.
How do you communicate with your kids about all this? I mean, I know that's an ongoing conversation. You've got a son who's like a big time football player right now. This has to be something that comes up all the time that they're dealing with, especially the younger kids as they're growing older.
Yeah. So there are two waves of kids. There's the older ones who are high schoolers, 2 sophomores, and then a senior, and then the younger ones who are 1st and 3rd grade. So obviously totally different conversations, experiences with or interactions with their classmates. But I have to say, my older ones lived through it at a really key point in their life when it was, they understood and they could, either hear about it in the hallway or hear about it on social media or however. And they really, and I think it's a testament to Austin and to the schools here, to the counselors, to the teachers, to their friends, to their classmates. We had very little drama, for lack of a better word, with the older kids. And at this point, it's never a conversation because I've been so honest with them and so transparent with them, and it's an open door policy that if they ever do have a question, let's talk about it. It's just not an issue anymore. But then that gets you to my younger kids who, of course, when this went down, had no idea. They didn't even walk. Mm-hmm. So then, the society that we live in now, which everything sits out there and is forever, whether it's Oprah or Tyler Hamilton's book or a New York Times article or this podcast, it sits there forever. So while my older kids can obviously go tap into that, they probably won't because they know everything pretty much. The younger ones are going to grow into it. And so then they're going to potentially, watch a documentary or read a book or watch Oprah or listen to this podcast. And then it's a whole nother wave of conversations. Mm-hmm. So, but you know what? I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not, there'll never be a time and place where I say, nope, I'm not talking about it anymore.
No,
with my children.
You have to continue that. I would imagine. What would happen if, Luke came home and said, they're doing steroids, or, I'm told I should be doing this,
right.
or maybe I did do it, yep. Or, have you thought about that? Have you had that conversation with him?
It's interesting because well, I think that this fight, this anti-doping fight is, I get asked all the time, should we just legalize everything? And my answer is always like, no, you can't do that. That's crazy. But they have a lot of, they need to exist. These agencies need to exist. But when they exist, they have a lot of messaging that I don't know that, between USADA and Jeff Nowitzki, who was the federal investigator who took down Bonds, took down Marion Jones, took me down, his main thing that he always said, these high schoolers, these steroids in high school. My son plays for Westlake High School. He's a senior. They're undefeated. They've had 10 NFL players come out of that school. They've won multiple state championships. They're ranked 3rd in the state today.
And this is Texas football.
This is Texas. This is
Friday night.
You want to talk
lights,
about the tip
on.
of the spear? This is the tippiest tip that you can get tipped.
So the war is being waged here,
and so
on that level.
And let me tell you something. There is none of that.
That's interesting.
None of it. And if there was, I would know.
And I would assume he's got aspirations to play college ball. No?
No.
Really?
No.
Is he starting?
He starts, yeah.
Wow.
Tonight's our biggest rival.
Why doesn't he want to play? Why doesn't he want to play in college?
Because he gets letters and gets offers. He doesn't want to. He doesn't want to play at a D2 school or a smaller D1 school. If he was at the level where Florida and Alabama and University of Texas and
be different.
It'd be different. But if he's getting, I'm going to make up some name and piss off some of your listeners, Southern Kalamazoo, Tech. He doesn't want to do that.
Right. Where does he want to go to school?
He wants to go to Alabama.
Yeah.
He got accepted. We toured. We had a great tour. He loved it.
But he's not at the level where you could play ball there.
No.
Yeah. That's a whole different thing.
That's a whole nother.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, so to me, it's like, wait, but that's the way politicians operate. They have these things that they put out there to drive a little bit of hysteria, to drive their agenda. But is that really happening? Because
I don't know.
Well, no, I'm telling you what's happening.
So you're seeing it at
in
his
true
school,
Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's not some kid in Dallas or in Houston.
It's got to be happening, though.
Right, but I'm telling you, on the best football team, or one of the best football teams in this state, at the highest level,
he's not seeing it.
That isn't even remotely a conversation.
Huh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, it's weird how it penetrates amateur athletics too. Of course. You hear these stories about these amateurs at Ironman and stuff like that. It's like
in cycling,
it's crazy. Amateur cyclists, where it's not their career, it's not their profession, and guys are getting caught doing this, man. What do you mean?
All these anti-aging clinics, and come on.
Yeah. Do you
people are competitive?
Yeah, says the most competitive man on earth.
But I mean, even age group triathletes, they want to either win their age group or get a PR and then that all fits or meets this whole, and you probably had a shit ton of people on the show talking about biohacking and whether it's diet, whether it's supplements, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's some new technology. I mean, it's people.
Yeah, and that line becomes very gray.
Of course.
And murky. What is that? It's if you I go to the doctor and
But do we care?
Well, I think it's a spectrum, when it's on the extreme. Yeah, I think we care. What does it mean for a cyclist to get a cortisone injection versus an NFL player to get a cortisone injection?
Well, we need another hour if you want to get me started. I read this morning that the new president of the UCI is going to completely ban corticosteroids, which is sort of a tricky way to say it. I mean, it's really cortisone. When the media loves saying corticosteroid because it has the word steroid, but when in reality, as you well know, cortisone is a catabolic agent, not an anabolic agent, and so it's a very different thing. When the public hears corticosteroid, they think anabolic steroids, but it's not an anabolic steroid.
It's an anti-inflammatory.
It's a catabolic agent, not an anabolic agent. So, yeah.
Well, we could bark up that tree forever.
Forever.
So, as this incredibly competitive person, we kind of explored this a little bit already. But do you think that you still have that in you, or is that dissipated? Like, that's part of who you are, right? So when you launch a podcast, do you apply that mindset, like, I have to be, in the top 10 in iTunes, or it's, I'm not going to settle for anything less? Like, do you apply that to everything that you're doing, or have you chilled out?
I think I've chilled on that. I'm curious. You probably do the same thing, but I'm curious weekly on how the public receives certain guests and the numbers that you get, how many downloads that you get, how many.
Do you get caught up in checking that stuff?
No, I don't. I don't ask. I get told, and if I don't get told, then I don't know. And I prefer it that way. But that all sort of changed when we did Stages, because Stages was last minute. I didn't know. I had very low I didn't want to have any expectations on how it would do. But as it went from first week to second week to third week, and the numbers just started to get crazy. At that point, I was like, okay, I don't even know what to think. I was shocked, humbled, honored, and then I got to this place where it was cool to see. I mean, it was for me personally, to generate that kind of interest.
Does that feel redemptive?
I mean, it's ironic. It's ironic that the one person that the entire sport is banned from mentioning, spur of the moment creates a brand, a channel, content that is now bigger than, or ended up being bigger than anything else the sport was doing. That's a little ironic. But at the same time, old Lance would have been like, fuck these motherfuckers, let's go. This Lance has to be
like, let's make this the biggest thing. Let's show everybody that I can dominate this.
I have to be thoughtful with it. And yes, the numbers are great, but you know what, they could be down next year. That's my mentality has to be that because I know this better than anybody, nothing lasts forever. And so, how I go about just building that show, developing that show, if we expand the show, but there can't be I can't be in a place where it's like, haha, told you so, or fuck y'all. Or,
that's not going to work for you.
No, I'm not. And I'm not there. I'm not. It's like, wow. That's what I tell people. I'm like, damn.
So that's not in the back of your mind.
No.
Yeah.
No.
What do you think are the stones that you still have to overturn, like in terms of just emotional development? Like, what are the things that you still struggle with, that you battle with, the demons that you need to kind of work through that are still kind of looming out there and trip you up?
I mean, there are still things that get me aggravated, but I mean, this process that I've lived through is, I always gauge it based on, like, when I walk down the street, or if I'm like, last weekend I went to ACL Fest, around thousands of people. You're walking through thousands, or you're walking in an airport, or you're walking in New York City. Like, how are you walking? How are you feeling? Like, when you see somebody, they look at you, are you like, why are you, or how, like, what's my confidence level? And confidence is different than arrogance. And man, the way I walk down the street now is so unbelievably different. My confidence level today, if I walk down Fifth Avenue in New York City versus 10 years ago, even 15 years ago, where couldn't have been a bigger story. You can't even begin to compare those two. And it's weird. And I'm not bragging. I'm just trying to explain this and be honest about it. But it is fucking lovely.
There's something about removing that dissonance between what you're saying and how you're behaving that kind of integrates, the human spirit in a certain way that I think allows you to be that way, and I think for me, that's been a big part of the journey. One of the kind of core principles of sobriety, of recovery is, not just owning your past and aligning your actions with your words and all of that, but
I'll give you an example. So we go do, and then we got to run because I got to go visit me. I take this podcast to the race in Colorado, and there was a whole lot of drama around it because they tried to ban me from doing that. They didn't want you to do it. This is crazy, but they actually did me a favor when they did that. So I rent this Airbnb, and and across in this cool part of Denver called Rhino, where it's all breweries and cool restaurants, and that's where all the cool kids hang out. So the Airbnb is right across the street from this brew pub. So I'm waiting on my Uber to take me down to the race, and I'm with Liz Kreutz, who's photographed me forever. She's like, "Oh, you've been spotted." I was like, "Okay, whatever." Long story short, the Uber pulls up, not in front of the house, but in front of the brewery. Mm-hmm. So we got to cross the street, and it's starting to rain. So we're about to get in the car, but there's still people out on the patio drinking and having a big old Sunday. And one of them goes, "Hey, Lance." And I said, "What's up, man?" And he goes, "Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck." And he didn't stop. Uh-huh. And then there's like 8 of them. And then they all start, "Fuck you. Fuck you." It was unbelievable. And I was like, that's never happened. It happens in social media. It happens on, you know how it happens. Right. And I'm just like,
in person to your face.
I'm like, oh my God. And Liz was like, "Get in the car. Don't do anything." And I was like, okay. So I got in the car, and they're just, of course, while we're pulling off, they're like, it was like a chant at that point. And I'm in the car, and I said, okay, I have to do something. I can't just let this go. So I call the bar. I said, "Let me talk to the manager." And the lady's like, "What's this about?" I was like, so anyways, he gets on the phone. I explained to him everything that happened. The guy says, "Man, I'm really sorry. That's super fucked up." I said, "Okay, here's the deal. Here's my credit card. Their whole tab is on me. But I want you to go out there and tell them that I picked up the beers and food and whatever they had, and I sent my love." And the guy's like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah." So he goes out there. I mean, then he called me back later. He's like, "Okay, this is what happened." So the moral of the story is that, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, maybe even less, that would have been a fight, a physical fight. Mm-hmm. And it just going, you know what? Because it rocked me, because that's the first time that's happened. But also getting there going, me being me has to do something. But my do something today was, you know what? I'm going to lean into this one.
It's contrary action.
Yeah.
Do you think you could ever get to a place where you can forgive the David Walshes of the world?
I mean, Walsh is a special one, and we'd need a whole another hour for him. I know David very, very well, and David, this is going to sound weird, but David and I are very similar. I was a win-at-all-cost guy. David is a win-at-all-cost guy. He'll tweak, he'll change, he'll manipulate, he'll lie, he'll deceive. So he made it an industry, and fair play. I think that's shifted for him. He wasn't much interested in an apology. He was more interested in the lawsuit and getting paid, and he got that. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what he got. And so if that's what he wanted, he got it. But I also know David too, and I know this story way better than anybody else. So I'm very close, not so much with him, but I know him well enough that I feel close to him, and I'm very close with Emma O'Reilly. So I see how somebody that he used as the pillar of this story to come after me. I've seen the way he's treated her, and she's seen the way he's treated her. And I can tell you, it's not an honorable. Mm-hmm. So I'm not uncomfortable with where I sit in the world with regards to him, because the ploys along the way, I know where they sit. And that's David. I mean, that's God, I didn't even,
Right, but the bigger point I'm really getting at is in order to really be free, you got to release these resentments or whatever these lingering things are.
I don't have any resentment towards him.
And I'm not saying David per se. I'm just saying in general. You know what I mean? Like in my experience and kind of what I've gone through, it's like even when you feel like you've been wronged and like this person and that person or whatever, it's like you're the one who's suffering.
Yeah.
You're the one who's paying the price for that resentment that you're harboring. And if you can get to a place of truly letting go of that, then you can walk down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan and be integrated.
And I would say, and I said this at the top of the show, there are still a few things, right? And the postal case being one. But almost all of those have been, and it's a process. I don't think anybody's, goes on a ayahuasca trip or goes to counseling once or goes to AA and walks out and is like, okay, I'm good. I've forgiven everybody. We're cool.
This is your life.
It's a long hike. Yeah. And so, they're getting shed. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you or anybody listening and say, okay, they're all gone. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it doesn't fucking make me livid and pissed off that Livestrong did what they did, because it does. So yeah, it's there, but hey, I'm going to work through it.
Right.
And I'm committed. And if you just said, I'm not going to work, or I'm not going to do the work, well, then you have a problem.
Right.
And so, but Walsh elicits no emotion in me. Travis Tigert elicits no emotion in me. I get it. I know exactly, and I'm good with that. And I'm me. I wake up as me every day, and I like waking up as me. And it's not called forward for nothing. And so, yeah, there are a few more I got to pick off and make right. And they might happen next month. It might take 3 years. I don't know. But the key, and is that you should this, is that so long as I realize that is a process, and I am committed to shedding that. Pretty powerful.
It's a good place to end it, man. Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
that was great.
Sorry,
cool.
I know this is short for you, but
no, I know. Yeah, man. I don't go Rogan length, but I can go a couple hours.
All hands on deck meeting at noon, so I'll be the bad guy if I don't.
All right. Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for your time. So you're easy to track down on the internet. At Lance Armstrong, WeDoSport.com, Stages Podcast, Podcast.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, right on, man.
I'm not very good about leveraging and promoting and pushing that stuff out, but there's some good ones out there if people are interested.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, thanks, dude.
Thank you. Thanks,
all
Rich.
Right. Peace.
Lance. How fast did y'all swim this morning?
We only went like 2,900. It was all sprints.